Alright, so it's time to look back at the tape. My first and only loss of the week. So that was reflex number 1, followed by reflex number 2, and for good measure, reflex number 3. And then it really wouldn't be complete without a round number, so here's reflex number 4. Thank you so much, Frederica, for the loss. Hey everybody, welcome back to another War of the Visions video. Today we're going to be talking the new Wastelands arena map. It's been out for almost 2 weeks and there are some tricks to the map. So we'll talk a little bit about the terrain itself and then what your tank's going to do, some of the units you can use, etc. So let's get into that now. So let's start off by talking a little bit about the map itself. Everyone's going to start off on these cliffs on either side, so you'll be facing your opponent. You'll also notice that the map effect is +1 range. So this makes quite a big difference if you're able to bring a gunner because they can shoot right across the map. And this makes the positioning of your units very important because it determines on how your units are going to counter people attacking you and also how you can pick your matchups. So it's something to consider. A lot of the battling will take place in the area in the middle there. That's where all the melee units are going to have to get down to. However, there's 2 different ways they can get down to that level. So the first way that you can descend is going to be by these ramps, and anybody at all can use these ramps. A lot of the fighting happens on the ramps themselves with ranged attacks, and this is where the height can start to hide you from gunners because they'll have to use things like leg shot to be able to reach down to the bottom of the ramp. The second area that you can descend from is from this little cliff here, and you actually need jump 2 to get off of it. So someone like Ramza, Mont, or like any sort of ninja dragoon, they'll be able to scale that cliff, but a lot of units are going to have to use the ramp. It's important for your units to get down in elevation because most good gunner attacks have 1 or 0 elevation change for their range. Their normal attack has 1 and their leg shot has 2, so you need units to go forward quickly to get out of gunners' ranges. Otherwise, they're going to take shots. Another thing you can do to protect your units is to put your tank in the middle slot. So here I have my Ryu on the end, and what I generally try to do is line him up against opposing Medianas, and that would allow me to basically attack them first turn and one-shot them. However, that doesn't work if someone with Vow of Love is in the middle slot. As soon as that happens, you're going to see that Ryu will move up and he will actually attack the person in the middle. So we can take a look at that now. Okay, so here's our example with a tank in the middle slot. So you're going to see that Ryu is going to go ahead and attack Mont even though Frederico is right in front of him because he is within his range. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing because he used double shot, and that is 2 levels of hate that have been taken off Mont. As soon as Mont takes his 3rd hit, he is no longer going to have any hate, and that is going to allow my other units to go after my opponent's non-tank units. So sometimes your gunner firing on a tank is not necessarily terrible, especially if you have other ranged units or units that have ranged attacks. So another thing to consider are what kind of self buffs you have equipped. So you can see here in a second, Ramza is going to run over and he's going to apply Rallying Cry to both himself and Mont. And in a second, he's also going to go and run and do that again to Ryu. Now this means that Ramza is going to stay on the top layer even longer, making him susceptible to the opponent's gunners. Now you can always pick opponents that aren't using gunners, but it is just something to consider because you saw that Mont, who doesn't have a buff to apply to everybody else, is running straight down the middle and then therefore out of the gunner's range, whereas the other 2 units stayed up on the top level. So you do have quite a bit of leeway in building your party, especially once we can turn abilities off on where they're going to be moving. It's just something to consider in any map, let alone this one that has such a huge advantage towards one type of unit. So now we'll talk a little bit about my formation and kind of what I was doing to pick some easy wins on this map. So first of all, I am using a gunner, I'm using Ryu, and his biggest advantage over the other gunners is that I have him leveled, but also that he is very, very fast. So he might not be as well statted as the other two gunners, but he does have very quick agility and can act first or second on a map, or certainly before the person across from him. So my main target tended to be people with Mediana on their first slot, or anyone that is weak enough for Ryu to kill, which was often under-leveled Lucias that people were putting into their party in order to get a PvP bonus. So that was easy for me to pick on them and get a lot of wins really quickly. I tried to avoid the parties that had the Medianas with a tank in the middle slot, although that's still not that bad, because those Medianas that started across from Ryu had to make it all the way across the map, usually to go down the ramp, and by the time they made it that far, they had been picked off by Ram's taunting blade or by Ryu after attacking the tank several times. So these were the types of wins that were really easy for me, and shows where positioning can be super important for your team so that you can win all these battles on auto. So we're gonna look at an example of this right here. Right at the beginning of the fight, the first thing that Ryu does is he attacks the Mediana across from him. This is a bad example, and it's like one of the only fights where my Ryu did not one-shot the Mediana, but generally that was always the case. That happened to be a pretty beefy one at that. Alright, that just about wraps up the video. So in conclusion, really just you need to be watching your units and what they're doing. You have to think about self buffs. If you're keeping your guys up on the top layer too long, are they going straight into the trenches? Could they use that left side to descend into the trenches faster? And then take a look at your opponent's formations. Are there do they have a unit that's going to be out of the action for a really long time because they've put them on the far left of the map? In that case, you can often take out 2 units before the third gets there. So there's a lot of different things you can do in this map. It's a lot of fun. I like it a lot more than the previous map. I think that it isn't just for gunners. I think there's a lot of things going on here in terms of strategy, and if we ever do get the ability to turn skills off in time to be used on this map, then I think this is going to be a very, very exciting map in that way, because then we can really experiment with how to get our units down into the trenches and across the map as soon as possible to fight off those pesky gunners. So good luck to you on this map. If you have any tips that I didn't mention or any corrections you want to make, please feel free to comment down below and we'll get to discussing. Otherwise, thanks for checking out the video, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for watching this video. You can show your support with a like and subscribe, and by checking out my Patreon at patreon.com/MassidiaGaming. Until next time, keep it real, Massidians.